The assassins have all but died out. The last remains of the Osaka Brotherhood are left with the responsibility of restoring the peace to the world. Assassin Issei X Harem. OC X Harem. Chapter 1. Hello everyone. I've decided to play my hand once more in a high school DxD fanfiction. This one, as you can see, will have our hooded heroes, the assassins. Now, I'll just be forward here. Anything that is a flame, or even coming close to one, will simply be ignored. Now, if you want to suggest an idea, or provide some constructive criticism, that is all right. Yes, Issei is an assassin. Right. Now that we are all set, let's start. Disclaimer. I don't own high school DxD. Two things I do own are this story and my OC. Knights ran out of the castle, rushing to defend their fortress from their enemies. The attackers had sacked the village, causing the people to retreat into the fortress walls, for it was their only safe haven. A small group of captains were meeting together in the midst of the chaos, forming a plan. What is our strategy? I want you two to rally the men, and drive the attackers into open, and have our archers massacre them. The main captain addressed them, and they left to carry out their orders. He turned to the other two. I want you to carry out this message to the master, have him get safely away from here. Then he turned to address the last one. Your job will be to. He didn't finish when a robed figure dropped from the ceiling and killed the subordinate he was speaking to. Who are you? You don't look like a soldier, the captain said, unsheathing his sword. The figure didn't respond, instead drawing a sleek sword from his back and rushing straight towards him. The knight fought the mystery man with great valor and strength, but he was outwitted. The man used an underhand tactic, by kicking the table toward him, stunning him for long enough. The robed killer took a small knife, and with precision of the lightning that struck from above, it buried itself in his heart. The shadowy killer quickly moved towards the corpse and searched its body. He found a book, exactly what he needed. His head whipped behind him, hearing more men approaching, and hastily made his escape into the battle-filled night. What did you find that night, Grandpa? Issei asked, sitting across from his grandfather. The old assassin chuckled at his grandson's curiosity. Let's just say, if I hadn't found that letter, your father and mother may have never met. Issei rolled his eyes, but smiled regardless. Even in his near-death state of age, Hanzo Hyodo still enjoyed having fun. What do you think of the story, Indra? Issei turned his head to his lifelong, old friend sitting in the chair behind him. He was occupied, drawing in a sketchbook, but he had been listening. Interesting, was his brief response. Issei sighed, while Hanzo chuckled. I hope you never change, Indra, Hanzo said, getting up from his seat. Let me help, Grandpa. Issei put one of his arms under his grandfather's and helped him over to a shelf. It had various objects on it, but there was one that the old assassin was going for. It was a small box. He grabbed it, and with Issei's help, sat back down in his chair. Issei, this is very important, and I feel like it is time, he said mysteriously. You mean? Issei let the question hang, wondering why his grandpa was doing this now. Yes, I do. He opened the box, and pulled out the item that both assassins and Templars fought to obtain. The Apple of Eden. Issei, Indra, you are a few of the last assassins of the Brotherhood. As my last deed, I give this artifact to you. Hanzo gave Issei the apple, treating it with great care. Please, do not abuse this. Use it, only when you have lost your way, Hanzo warned. Thank you, Grandpa. Thank you, Master. Issei and Indra bowed respectively. The sky was clear, but the wind carried the sad message of Hanzo's passing. Issei and Indra stood by the coffin, as it burned to ash, and Hanzo's secrets along with him. Issei stood stoic as he watched his grandfather leave the world. He felt Indra put a hand on his shoulder, as a gesture for comfort, but he did not need it. Issei was happy that Hanzo finally got his rest, he deserved it. Now it's our turn, Indra, he said, turning to his old friend. Indra nodded and followed Issei to a hideout, left for them. Their hideout is the same as the one in Assassin's Creed Revelations. They found the entrance to the hideout, which was on the outskirts in one of the more diverse districts of Kuo. He really went out, huh? Issei commented as he looked around. The water was a nice touch. Were those? Never mind, he didn't want to know why Hanzo had those here. It's large, Indra said, his eyes roaming around the main section of the hideout. Maybe we can fill it out someday, Issei replied. Being the last of your kind wasn't exactly a comfortable thought. Issei walked towards a desk with a map of the region on it. There was a note addressed to him and Indra. It read, Issei, Indra, as much as I know this will put you in a confined space, I had some documents prepared for you to enroll in the local academy. This will give you another cover as to help blend in. Issei looked through one of the drawers in the desk, and surely enough, there were 2 school uniforms inside, neatly folded and clean. Well, it's not exactly what I had in mind, but it will give us a good start. Issei handed Indra his uniform and they both put them on. They couldn't carry any of their equipment with them except for their hidden blades, but that was all they would need. Issei checked the time after getting his uniform on. It was 5 minutes till 8 a.m. School started at 8:30. They had plenty of time to spare for their arrival. Ready to go, Indra? The quiet assassin shook his head, which made Issei chuckle. Unless he knew you well enough, Indra was not the social type. We have time, so let's get going, Issei said, checking his blades. Their vambraces matched with the color scheme of their uniforms, and even looked like they were part of it, so there was no worrying about them being found out. I was expecting something a little bigger, but it's not bad at all, Issei commented as the 2 walked past the gates. As the 2 walked, they noticed that there were more female students than males here. Don't tell me this is just a brothel designed to look like school, Issei whispered. Indra rolled his eyes. Hanzo probably knew about this, and left them in the dark, as a last pinch at having fun before he died. Nothing we can do, Indra commented quietly, just barely enough to be heard. They entered the lobby and couldn't see any staff members in sight. Issei walked up to a girl with pink hair, and decided to ask her for help. Hello miss, could you point me and my friend here to the principal's office? He asked. The girl blushed when she turned to answer him. It's just up those stairs, and take a right, she responded while blushing madly at the sight of the brunette before her. Issei gave her a charming smile and thanked her. Thank you miss. Katase. My name is Katase. What's yours? She introduced herself. My name is Issei Hyodo, and my friend here is Indra Kaneshiro. Indra waved his hand in small greeting, not wanting to speak at the moment. It's nice to meet you Issei, Indra, Katase replied with a smile. Well, it's been pleasure Katase. I hope we meet again soon. Come, Indra. The 2 left to go to the principal's office. They came up to a long hall, filled with many doors, which Issei assumed to be either staff or storage rooms. Using eagle vision, Issei found the door highlighted in gold, 3 down to the left and entered. Sitting at a desk was a woman, who appeared to be in her early 20s. She had long scarlet hair and dark, chocolate brown eyes. Her skin was a perfect cream color. A.N. This character is just made up, she is not a Gremory. Hello, I'm the principal, Ms. Catherine Sweetwater. Are you here to enroll? Issei handed her his and Indra's forms. Yes. We were hoping to start as soon as possible. Catherine looked them over thoroughly before nodded in satisfaction, and handed them back. Well, everything checked out, you boys are good. You start today, your homeroom will be Class 2B. It's going to be on this floor and 2 halls on the left. Thank you ma'am. The 2 shuffles are of the room and found their class after 5 minutes. Issei knocked on the door, and the teacher, another beautiful woman, answered the door. Oh hello. You're the new boys right? She smiled. Come on in, and introduce yourselves to the class, and we will resume the lesson. The class got quiet and Issei introduced himself first. Hello, my name is Issei Hyodo, and I hope we can get along well with each other. He gave a smile making some of the girls giggle and blush. The males in the room immediately did not like him. Damn pretty boys, he heard someone mutter under their breath. Please take a seat by Ms. Hamejima, and you can introduce yourself as well, she addressed Indra. I am Indra Kaneshiro, it's a pleasure, he greeted briefly. You can sit behind Ms. Gremory. He took his seat and the class went on, with the 2 assassins catching on to the lesson quickly. School was over for the day, and the students were all attending their after-school activities or going home. There is something strange about those 2 boys, Sona said, watching them interact with some girls from the Kendo club. Should we keep them under watch? Asked her queen. I believe so, just to be safe, Sona replied. Tsubaki, I want you, Rhea, and Momo to keep an eye on them. Tsubaki nodded and left. Understood. Sona turned her attention back out of the window, peering down at the mysterious boys. Issei was a brunette with brown eyes, messy hair, and appeared to be of a fit build. His friend, Indra, had short snowy white hair, neon green eyes, and was of the same build. She noted he was a bit on the pale side. Interesting. She turned her attention to the papers on her desk that needed to be done. With Issei, he had suggested having a spar, and the kendo girls gave him permission to have it in their club building. "Thank you," he said, making some of them blush at the smile he was giving. Issei just had that playboy effect that really attracted the opposite gender. He was not a pervert, but he did not mind appreciating the female body. "So Indra, hand to hand, or armed?" Issei asked his partner. Indra took a shinai from one of the girls, with her permission, and took a spot on the mat. Issei nodded at his choice and took a shinai as well. The two gazed into each other's eyes, seemingly reading the other's thoughts. They both attacked with quick and precise moves, not wasting any of their strength. On the side, the girls watched, impressed beyond words. It was like watching two professional swordsmen at work, showcasing their very apparent skill to an audience of eager learners. The two spent nearly 15 minutes sparring, and it came to an end, with a draw, seeing as not one of them could land a hit on the other. "We're still on point." Issei panted slightly. Indra nodded in agreement with his friend, and they both handed the borrowed shinai back, before leaving the club. While the two walked back to their hideout, Issei informed Indra of a few targets around the city. "We have 2 targets. There's a man selling off girls through a strip club, and then another man, a doctor who needs to be healed." Indra nodded in understanding. "What is your decision?" Indra asked. "I want you to go for the girls. I attract too much female attention as it is." While Indra did not like being near anything that was close to a brothel, he knew that it was necessary. Nodding, Indra kept that in mind as the two entered the hideout to ready their equipment. It was time to work. The doctor was a man with a rather dry passion. This passion was sadism. No, it wasn't the fetish of being rough with another person. This was pure sadism, of a cold-blooded nature. His latest victim was a young girl, about 9 years of age. She shivered in fear, as the doctor gazed down at her with an uncaring expression. The test was simple. Inject her with the poison, note the effects, and sell it for profit. The doctor raised his vial, ready to start. Had he actually looked at the syringe closely enough, he would have seen a white, robed silhouette creep by. Time to begin. With that thought, the doctor moved in close, making the girl struggle against her restraints. She cried out for someone, anyone to help her, but no one would answer the call. Right as the doctor held the needle, just barely an inch from her skin, he heard the sound of glass shattering. He turned around to see one of his special poison bottles had fallen to the floor. But in the puddle of razor shards, were a set of feet that belonged to a hooded figure in white robes. Numb. That was what the doctor felt as he tried to move to apprehend this intruder, but he lost his footing, and fell to the floor, black consuming his vision. The hooded figure turned their attention to the quivering girl on the table and moved to her at a gentle pace. The girl couldn't help but feel safe, with whoever this person was. She could feel the serenity coming off of him in soothing waves. The restraints holding her were cut, by what, she did not see, for it was too quick. "Come along, little one. Let's get you out of this place." The voice was male. It was a gentle tenor that put her at ease. The girl complied, taking hold of the stranger's hand as he guided her out. In a modest strip club, known as the Red Dress. There was a celebration, a dark celebration. A slave trader has been using the strip club as a front for forcing girls, ranging from varieties of ages, to work as dancers, bartenders, and overall prostitutes. The slave trader himself watched from a booth above the turntables where the DJ did his work. He smiled seeing how much money was coming in. He felt like taking a dance and went down to the floor and grabbed a girl by random. He spun her around and in his drunken state, gave her rump a hard smack. As he spun, he felt someone give him something, a syringe. He smiled seeing how generous the club was as to give him just the stuff he needed to cool down. Injecting himself with the liquid, he could feel himself drifting already. It was as if he were sitting on lounge chair on a sunny beach. Until he started seeing blues crossing his vision every so often. The blurs were white, that much he could tell. He looked around, only to feel something hit him in his throat. He tried talking, but the drug must have had a very strong effect to make him see things like this. It wasn't until he felt something wet running down his chest, that he reached up to his throat and felt the same wetness. He looked at his hand to see it stained crimson red. He collapsed to floor dead, and not a single person could identify the killer, nor would they ever. Character bio name: Issei Hyodo. Age: born September 15, 1998, currently 17. Rank: Master Assassin. Personality: born into the order and an assassin by choice. Issei is a calm and kind soul, and has a refined sense of humor. He is quite easy to converse with, but he keeps his socializing to a certain limit to avoid ever spilling information to people who shouldn't know of said knowledge. Weapons: hidden blades. New-fashioned hidden blades made of stronger steel alloy. The right has been modified with a hook blade attachment. Nodashi: a standard and elegant nodashi. 44. Magnum revolver. A magnum revolver used for multiple ranged kills. Hunting crossbow. A modified hunting crossbow that can revolve, reloading itself, as well as be used for stealth ranged kills. Sog knife. A stolen American sog knife from when he visited the country as a child. Equipment: assassin notebook. Used by Issei to catalog and express inner thoughts as well as store vital information. Assassin robes. New set of traditional robes, consisting of a modified kimono and hakama pants. Modern bracers. New traditional bracers that offer better protection. Character bio name: Indra Kaneshiro. Age: born May 27, 1998, currently 17. Rank: Master Assassin. Personality: born into the Brotherhood and an assassin by choice. Indra is reserved and calculating, as well as kind-hearted. He has a rather dry sense of humor, and hardly ever socializes very much. Weapons: hidden blades. New-fashioned hidden blades made of stronger steel alloy. The left has been modified with a phantom blade attachment. Katana. A standard and beautiful katana. Kodachi. A standard kodachi, sharp and elegant. Heckler & Koch HK45 SD. HK45 modified with a suppressor for stealth. Equipment: assassin notebook. Used by Indra to express inner thoughts and store vital information. Assassin robes. New set of traditional robes, consisting of a modified kimono and hakama pants. The first chapter for this story is done. Please review. Tell me if you like it or not. I will update as soon as I can. Ch1 of 12. Next, Chapter 2. I am back with the second installment. I hope the last chapter was enjoyable. I have not made any major changes with pairs, only a few. I have decided I will involve some other characters from other shows to pair up with the assassins. Now, I'm done with the intro. Let us continue. Issei sat down on the cushions on the floor and gave out a content sigh, as he sat by the cozy fireplace. Work had been rather slow, but he wasn't complaining. Assassins were trained to be patient. Since work was finished for today, Issei felt like taking a stroll, but first, he would wait for Indra. No doubt the white-haired assassin was finished already and on his way back. "Ah, there you are," Issei commented upon hearing the hideout entrance being opened. Indra said nothing as he walked past Issei and went to a sink to clean his hands. Not every woman in strip club kept themselves clean. The kill was a success and he went unnoticed. After cleaning himself, he turned back to Issei. "Something wrong?" he said. Issei shook his head. "No, all is fine with me. But, I wanted to know if you would accompany me around the city for a little while." Indra considered, since there wasn't much to do in a place like this. "All right," he agreed. Issei smiled and led his friend outside and around the parts of the city he liked. A wonderful place to call home, no? Issei took in the scenery around. They were in one of the more quiet parts of the city, the residential district to be exact. "It is." Indra agreed. While it was no Kyoto, Kuo was certainly a place to admire. The two kept their casual pace, coming upon a park. They could see children playing and families enjoying time together. "And there is the fruit of labor," Issei said, almost in a dazed way. Indra knew that Issei was much more passionate about his work, more so than the others. If he was honest with himself, he actually felt like having teach him that sort of feeling, since Indra grew up with no family. "It is a wonderful scene," he commented. Issei gazed back at his old friend. "It makes me wonder about the Templars. If they wish for peace, why do they try to take this away?" Issei gestured towards the warm scene playing out in front of them. "I don't know. But that is why we are here, to preserve the free will of the people," Indra replied. Issei took that answer, satisfied, and they continued to move on. Tomorrow is Friday, right? Issei asked out of the blue. Indra nodded, not sure why his friend asked. Good. That means it will be a quiet workday tomorrow. Indra gave Issei a dry look. When the two were not out saving the world, they worked at a humble bakery. Indra continued to give Issei his dry look, because no matter what day it was always quiet. Why he complained about a few high school students having a group talk was beyond him. I thought you were patient. Indra asked. I am, but honestly, they don't need to cause such a ruckus. Issei rolled his eyes. A group of boys just happened to come into the shop one day, and they made quite a scene. You mean those boys? Indra asked again. The ones who kept on claiming they would spread perversion everywhere. Issei said with irritation rolling out of his voice. Okay, not that was reason he could follow. As the two walked, Indra suddenly stopped. Issei looked at his partner with the concern that something must be wrong. Indra let his gaze travel to the tree they would pass under, and his eagle vision went active. In the tree, he spotted the being hiding within the mess of evergreen leaves. He knew who it was instantly. Rolling his eyes, but smiling regardless, he called out to her. Faye, come down. The person in the tree. Faye gave out a sigh and climbed down from her spot. She was now visible as a very beautiful girl, around his age. She had the perfect cream-colored skin and amber eyes that could cut right into your soul. She had heterochromic black and purple hair that reached her waist like a silky waterfall. She wore a black and purple outfit consisting of a short-sleeved purple V-neck, a black miniskirt, and purple stockings complemented by black-heeled boots. All in all, she was a beauty that would make most regular men lose their senses at the sight of her. Issei smiled upon seeing the girl. Faye was a Cheshire cat yokai, very close with the Nekomata species. It's good to see you again, Faye. How long has it been? He asked, giving her a brief hug. About 5 months, she replied. She smiled brightly at Indra before the two embraced each other. Issei already what was going on between the two. It was more than just a friend relationship. Issei was how the two were looking at each other, and decide to give them some time. I'll leave you two at it. I'll be around, Indra. Find me when you two are finished. While Issei moved away to give his old friend some alone time with his girlfriend, he could feel the gaze of curious eyes on him. To whom they belonged to, he had no idea since Indra was one of the few people he knew in this area. To humor himself, he moved into the crowd of people walking among the streets, and like a needle in a haystack, he was gone. What? Tsubaki blinked, making sure her eyes weren't fooling her. She could have sworn she had seen him move into the crowd. He should have been easy to distinguish, but he just went up and vanished just like a grain of sand being carried by a powerful ocean current. Tsubaki tried to sense for him using her magic sensory, but nothing came up. She sighed, seeing as the person of interest was no longer here. She would just have to tell Sona she had lost track of him. She got up and left her spot from the cafe she was watching him from, not once noticing the figure on the roof nearby, watching her leave. As Issei watched the vice president of the student council leave, he couldn't help but chuckle. Who would have thought this area was occupied by devils? He mused to himself. He noticed the sun was setting, and since he wanted to enjoy tomorrow, he decided to go home and get to bed. Upon entering the hideout, Issei found that Faye had decided to join, for Sis was sitting right next to a sleeping Indra. You can stay here if you wish, Issei offered. Faye smiled. Thanks, I was getting tired of having to constantly relocate. Issei gave her a pat on the shoulder. This will always be your home, if you wish it to be. Now I need to sleep. School won't wait for me if I end up sleeping in. The following morning, school went along just like the other day, without a hitch. Indra had the shift today at the shop, so that left Issei with some time to himself. He decided to go through the park once more, to have some peace before looking for the next Templar. As Issei made his mental plan, he bumped into someone, female, if the sound of their shout was any indication. Oh, I'm sorry miss. I wasn't. Issei stopped when his caught the frame of yet another familiar face. Asia? Asia Argento? He asked. The blonde nun blinked. Do I know you, sir? She asked. Issei smiled. You don't remember me? It's me, Issei Hyodo. We worked together in the Vatican, feeding the poor families. He tried reminding her. Her eyes widened to the size of dinner plates, as she gazed up at the brunette's face. Oh, Issei. She quickly got up and hugged him for all he was worth. Issei returned the hug, and when they separated, he chuckled at the flustered look on the nun's face. "It's been years," she shouted. Issei nodded. "Indeed it has. What brings you to Japan? I thought you were working for the Catholic Church in Florence after I left." That was where he saw her expression become downcast, almost to the brink of tears. He quickly took her hands into his and gave her a soft look. "Asia, what happened?" he asked. The nun stayed quiet for a minute before spilling her dilemma. "I was banished from the church, after they saw me heal a devil." "Oh, I'm sorry, Asia. I know you loved nothing more than helping others. Those fools condemn what they don't understand. You did nothing wrong." Issei comforted her. Asia felt better at her old friend, and longtime crush's kind words. "Say, why don't we take this time to catch up with one another? Indra is a bit busy right now, so we have plenty of time to ourselves," he suggested. Asia blushed at the idea of being alone with the assassin, and nodded gratefully. "Here, Asia, you eat a hamburger just like this. Take it in your hands and take a bite of it." He showed her how to eat the fast food creation in front of her, as she eyed it with curiosity. Being sheltered in the church for much of her life, she had never seen or even heard of a hamburger before, but she certainly liked it now. "Wow! It's so good!" she exclaimed before taking another bite. Issei smiled as he watched the adorable blonde. That childlike curiosity and naivety hadn't left her, not yet anyway. Once she learned the truth about him, well, he wasn't sure what she would do, but he would not hold anything against her. After leaving the burger joint, Issei showed Asia around the city, his city. Issei had been raised while traveling for most of his life, but he was proud to call Kuo his home. The two were strolling through the park, and while they strolled, Asia came across a young boy, weeping along the sidewalk. The boy had scraped his knee badly and could not help himself for crying so loudly. "Had bad, does it hurt? I can help you." She kneeled down by him, and he showed her his knee, which was close to becoming a patch of red. Issei watched wide-eyed as he was able to see some sort of green aura emit from her hands and onto the boy's wound. Could it be? Is she a magician of some kind? He thought. Issei has encountered magicians before, but he never once thought Asia would be one. Or maybe something else was going on. Asia stood up, finished with her work, and the little boy stood up, happy as can be, no longer with pain eating at him. "Thank you, big sister," he said as he ran off to his mother. Issei took this time to ask the question, now begging to be answered in his mind. "Asia, what was that? Was that magic?" He saw her face take an expression of complete sadness, and now he knew that her power was a touchy subject. "It is all right if you don't wish to share. I will not pry you for information," he said. Asia shook her head and looked back at Issei with a smile, despite how painful it was to think about it. "No, it wasn't magic. That was my sacred gear, twilight healing. It gives me the power to heal any wound." Issei stood amazed as he now saw his old friend with a new respect. The power to heal wounds, now that suited her just right. "However, one day, the church staff saw me helping a devil. My powers can heal both holy beings and devils, and when they saw it happen they called me a witch, and cast me out," she said with tears building in her eyes. Issei gave her a comforting hug and held her. He separated from her and gave her a charming smile. "Asia, like I said before, you were only doing what you felt was right. That is not a crime." Asia would have continued, but she caught sight of a woman she was familiar with. The woman had creamy skin and long raven hair reaching her waist, kind purple eyes, and her outfit was very revealing to say the least. "Asia," she ran towards and took her hand. "We need to get back. Donasik is getting suspicious," she said urgently, with Issei picking up on it. Asia turned to Issei and gave him an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, Issei, but I need to go back to the church now. Hopefully I'll see you again soon." The woman she was with gave Issei a look. She curiously gazed upon brunette whom Asia had been on a date with. She found herself a love already. She mentally sighed, wishing she would find her love as well. They were out there somewhere. Sighing again, she introduced herself. "My name is Rainier, nice to meet you, Issei. But we are short on time right now." She left with Asia before he could respond. But that was okay, he could just follow them and learn of what's going on. But first, he needed his partner and his equipment. The two assassins found the church. It looked quite vacant and slightly unstable, if the cracks in the wood were not an indication. "Quite charming." Issei commented on the place's appearance. He was looking around with eagle vision, making sure no hostiles were about the area. He pushed open the church doors to see that the interior was clean, as if were never touched. How odd. Issei looked around, until his eyes caught a familiar blue glow. At the end of the altar, the microphone on the mantle was highlighted with blue. Issei grabbed it and gave it a pull. He let eagle vision wear off, as he and Indra saw a staircase unwind from the floor beneath them. Quite an unorthodox church, huh? Issei commented. Indra nodded in agreement. They descend down the shadowed steps, and as they went lower, they could hear faint chanting. We must be close. Be alert. Issei warned. Indra nodded. They reached the bottom of the stairs, and saw a man in traditional exorcist robes guarding the way. Indra got behind the man and kicked one of his legs out from under him, before puncturing his neck with his hidden blade. The man didn't have a chance to cry out, all there was a wet cough. Show off. Issei whispered, trying to see what was happening. Luckily there were rafters along the edges of the walls, close to the ceiling. The gaps and cracks in the walls allowed them to scale up and hide above. Finally, twilight healing will be mine. A man, no, a fallen angel said, standing in front of a cross. On that cross, was Asia, chained and bound. Issei narrowed his eyes, now understanding what was happening. This man wanted her power for himself. He quickly surveyed the room and saw 3 other fallen angels chained to the wall adjacent to the platform in which Asia was to be crucified. He turned to Indra and whispered his plan. I'm going for the one on the platform. You take the guards by the prisoners, and then we will both engage the enemy. Indra nodded and maneuvered his way to the other side of the room, while Issei made straight for the platform. We're almost there. Danasik grew a large smile at the prospect of power falling into his hands. Down at the floor, a couple of exorcists were speaking amongst one another, until one of them felt something touch his back. What? Is there something on me? He turned around, showing his comrades that there was some kind of brown shell-looking object there. Boom. The group was killed in an explosion of shrapnel, taking a few others nearby with them. What happened? Danasik turned his head to the commotion. We don't know. One of the exorcists replied. There wasn't a trace of anyone else here. The guards at the side where Kalawarner, Rainier, and Middle were being held did not report. In fact, the girls were gone too. Underneath the platform, Indra laid the girls down under the staircase so that they could rest. He held up a finger for them to be quiet, while he proceeded with Issei's plan. Who are these guys? Was the collective thought of the 3. Hey! Who are you? They heard a shout. Then there were sounds of blades clashing together, blood and bodies hitting the floor, cries of pain. What was going on? Middle, with only enough strength, peeked out from behind the stairs and saw the whole room littered with the corpses of all of the exorcists. Up on the platform, Issei held the dying Danasik in his arms. For someone who could fly, he was taken off guard by an aerial kill quite easily. Ironic in a way. I just wanted respect, Danasik said to his killer. Issei gave him a solemn look, shaking his head. Respect is earned, my friend. It cannot be inherited, or gained from gross misdeeds. Danasik lost his vision, but smiled anyway. He was finally going home. Perhaps you're right, he said, and let out his last breath. Issei closed his eyes and gave him a short prayer. May you be equal in death, he said before helping the now weak Asia off of the cross. She was unconscious, that was good. She would need her rest. He found a wooden cart, like those ones you would see horses hauling around in much more older times. They loaded the girls into the cart and luckily knew a path back to their hideout where no one would see them. Who are you? Rainier asked. Issei smiled. Friends. Just let your bodies rest, we will take care of you, he said. Rainier felt herself smile before letting her eyes close, and fell into deep sleep. Rias and her peerage were investigating the fallen angel activity in the area. The church they were hiding was in sight, and she was ready to get rid of the threat. Be ready, she said, leading them down the open set of stairs. What she saw was a big surprise. The whole room was littered with bodies of what she guessed were exorcists, rogue most likely. At the platform above, laid a dead fallen angel. Kiba crouched by him and immediately noticed how he was killed. Someone was here before us, and they certainly know how to make a clean kill. I think we might have another threat to deal with, he said, making Rias frown. The worst was that this threat was unknown. So she wouldn't know when she saw the culprit or not. It could be anyone. She heard Akino hum in interest. She walked over to her queen to see her holding a single feather. It was a beautiful brown, just like an eagle's. "This doesn't belong to an angel of any kind that I know of," she said, twirling it between her fingers. "Whoever killed this fallen angel must be very skilled. We might need help," Kiba suggested. Rias nodded. "We can speak with Sona about this. Now let's head back." The group nodded and left, but Akino kept the feather in her hand. For some reason, she felt like keeping it. There it is, Chapter 2. Please review. I will try to keep updates at a decent pace, but don't get too expectant. Previous ch2 of 12 next, Chapter 3 back again with installment number 3. I see that my story is making good progress so far, despite how short it is, but I am happy nonetheless. Disclaimer. I think you guys know I don't own Assassin's Creed and High School DxD already. Not sure why I bothered with this. Let's just get going. Issei and Indra had their guests resting in the main room, close to the table so that their wounds could be treated, should they do something to open them up. Issei smiled as he laid Asia to rest. Bless the girl's poor heart, she didn't deserve to be brought into all of this conflict. That's why Issei intended to get her involved with the academy, so that she may integrate into a society that would accept her. So much has happened in our short time here, he said, taking off his robes and setting them on a stand. Indra was already laying in his favorite in the corner by the fire in the armor room. Issei then got down on his spot with the cushions on the floor, and against the wall, and let his eyes close. Morning came, gently waking Issei from his pleasant slumber. He stood up stretched out, releasing some tension that had formed the position he had been sleeping in. His lean body gave out multiple satisfying popping sounds, which was a very nice feeling for early risers. Time to get ready. He went to the armor room to wake his friend, only to find him in his uniform already. "How long have you been up?" Issei asked. Indra gave him a side glance before turning his gaze back to the gentle flame that slowly consumed the wood trapped in its threshold. "About 2 hours," he replied. Issei was about to say something, but Indra interrupted him. "School doesn't start for another 30 minutes, I didn't want to disturb you," he said. Issei smiled at how his friend was being considerate of him. But, as much as Indra needed to be ready, Issei needed to be as well. Master assassins they may be, but it was mindful to remember that they were very short on manpower. With no need to voice his thoughts, Issei went back to dress himself, and to check on their new guests. With his uniform on, and his blades concealed, he went to check on the fallen angels. From observation, their wounds weren't too serious, but they were still enough to keep you out of the field for a few days. They were healing at a nice rate though, the medicine was doing its job. "Cone on Indra, we have 20 minutes left, and I want to get to the breakfast line first," he said, going off at a jogging speed. The two arrived, with just enough time to spare before class started. They took their seats, and got out their materials, ready to work. "Good morning Issei." Issei turned his head to find Katase coming to his desk. He smiled back and returned her greeting. "Good morning Katase. Are you ready to get this day over with?" The pinkette nodded. While she liked school, she really liked doing her activities much more. "Yeah, the kendo club is going to a tournament today, and I'm really excited," she said. Issei nodded in approval. This girl was determined, and she was passionate. Two good traits to have. "I hope to see you and your team coming back with a nice trophy," he told her, getting her to blush. "Why yeah, we're gonna win, I promise," she said. Issei smiled and gave her a pat on her head. "I have no doubt you will," he said. This moment was brought to an end when the teacher came in, apologizing for being late, and getting the class going. "I'm sorry. I slept in, and then I was caught in traffic." "Okay, let's continue from where we left off yesterday," she said, getting everyone engaged. "Ms. Kirasaki should take a day off. She seems to be very stressed lately," Issei commented as he and Indra ate their lunch. They were on the roof, due to how quiet it was, and it also allowed them to relax. "I agree," Indra said, taking a rice ball into his mouth. The two sat in a comforting silence for a few minutes, until Issei spoke again. "Were there any requests for our service at the coops?" he asked. Indra shook his head negatively. "Nothing. The enemy has gone quiet for now," he said, and Issei couldn't bring himself to reply to that. So far, after the 3 years in which his grandfather died, Issei, Indra, and the few other Japanese assassins have been the ones holding the Templars at bay. Luckily, no one knew of their existence due to how few they were. but that could also be their downfall if they weren't careful. The sound of the bell for the final class brought them out of their thoughtful silence. "So, you have plans for this weekend?" Issei asked. Indra shook his head. "None that I can think of. How about a visit to the mall?" Issei suggested. Indra thought it over quite briefly, and nodded. "Mall it is," Issei said as the two went to their final class for the day. "So many attractions," Indra idly commented as he and Issei wandered the labyrinth that is the mall. "Agreeable, but it's the people here that make it like this," Issei replied. "True. Here, let's stop for lunch." Issei caught sight of a cafe and beckoned Indra along with him. "Welcome, master." A group of girls dressed as maids greeted them. They stopped at a maid cafe. Indra gave Issei a look. His expression was sending him the, "You knew about this" look. "What can I say? Grandpa used bring me here from time to time," he replied. "Right this way, master." One of the maids led them to a booth and gave them menus for their orders. Her hair was brown and tied into a spiky ponytail. Her bangs were parted mostly to the left, exposing only one blue eye. "I will be serving you today, my name is Levi. Just call for me when you are ready." She left to the kitchen while Issei and Indra browsed their selections. They searched through for about 5 minutes and called for Levi. "So, what can I get for you?" She had a notepad and pen already in hand. "I'll have the tempura with a side of dipping noodles," Issei said, with Levi writing that down and turning her eye towards Indra. "I'll have the fried rice with beef," he said. After a few quick twitches of her fingers, she had the orders down and took them off to the kitchen. "Wait for just a few moments," she said, leaving the boys to themselves. "She's nice," Indra commented. That made Issei smirk. "Oh, so you've found another interest, he asked with a raised eyebrow. Indra rolled his eyes. Another 10 minutes passed silently, until Levi came back with their dishes and served them. Fried rice with beef, and tempura with a side of dipping noodles to order. She said, placing the plates down with the utmost grace and care. "All right, enjoy, and if you need anything just call." The two did indeed enjoy their meal, and when they finished they left the money owed, with Indra leaving extra as a tip for the service. "Come back soon," the maids at the front said as they left. When they were out of the building, Issei nudged Indra with his elbow, smiling. "Admitted Indra, you like that girl," he said. Indra didn't bother gracing him with a reply. "There's nothing strange at all, President," Momo said as she watched the boys leave the cafe. "There has to be something," Sona said from the other side of the phone. "Keep watching. I know that I am wasting your time, so I will make sure this is worthwhile for you," Sona said, with Momo nodding. With Indra and Issei, the two were now walking out of the mall and back into the open world. "We have a follower," Issei commented. He wasn't sure how long the person had been tailing them, but he found it amusing that they believed they would be able to fool his senses. Once Issei caught your scent, there was no escaping. "Want to ditch them?" Issei asked. Indra nodded. So the two waited at the intersection as the cars zoomed by, and when the light turned red and the people began moving about the streets, they had become one with the people. Momo now understood when Tsubaki said, "They just disappeared," because that is exactly what happened. Even when the crowd thinned out and dispersed, not one of them were in sight. Sighing, Momo decided to call Sona as she made her return to her king. "Maybe you're just a bit stressed," Rias said as she sat across from her rival, both engaged in the game of chess. "No, I'm not Rias. Something is off about those two, I know there is," Sona insisted. "Well, how about I give it a try with my peerage then?" Rias suggested. "Momo and Tsubaki say that they just keep disappearing without a trace. How will you prevent that?" Sona asked. Rias rubbed her chin, moving her rook and taking of one Sona's knights. "Why don't I just approach them directly?" she suggested. Rias was much more forward with her strategies than her rival. She was also very persistent when she wanted to be. "I suppose that may work, but don't make it too obvious. You'll end up driving them away." However, Sona already felt that the redhead was going to just that anyway. "Checkmate." Rias frowned as she checked the board and saw how Sona had taken her king. She sighed. "Next time," was all she said while leaving the room. Sona put the board away and looked at the two documents on her desk. Each held a picture of the boys Issei Hyodo and Indra Kaneshiro. She narrowed her eyes, as if the pictures were mocking her. "Just what are you hiding?" Issei looked back towards the school, making Indra stop to look at him curiously. "Something wrong?" Issei blinked before swiveling back around and continuing forward. I got a strange feeling just now. Perhaps things will get interesting here, he said while chuckling. They headed back for the hideout to check on their guests again. It would be rude to just leave them in their condition without knowledge of how to take care of themselves. They entered their secluded home and saw their fallen angel guests sitting at the table, playing a game of cards. I see you three are feeling better, Issei said, making his presence known. The girls jumped a little but relaxed at the sight of the two assassins. Yeah, we feel a little better, but the pain still makes our bodies ache, Rainier said, wincing slightly when she stood up. Indra looped his arm under hers and helped her over to the medical table and proceeded to get her to drink from a bottle, the one most likely used on them, the girls presumed. By the way, we never got your names, Issei said as he helped Middle to her feet. My name's Rainier, said the violet-eyed women from the medical table. I'm Calawarner, the blue-haired woman said. And I'm Middle, the blonde in Issei's arms exclaimed, making him chuckle at her childishness. Speaking of childlike behavior, he needed to check on Asia. Here, let Indra tend to you. I need to check on Asia. Where am I? Asia woke up from her rather long nap, looking around curiously. She saw what appeared to be rocky walls, an underground lair of some kind. Are you feeling better? She heard Issei's voice, and quickly looked to her side to see her old friend smiling softly at her. Yes. I feel better, but where are we? She asked. She saw Issei chuckle. Right now, you're in our hideout, he answered. Asia looked confused, prompting the brunette to further break down his explanation. Indra stays here with me as well, so it is our hideout, he said. Oh, I see. Can you turn around please? I need to heal myself, but… well you know. Issei nodded in understanding and turned away from her. Come join us in the main room when you feel ready, he said, leaving the former nun to herself. Indra was finished administering the girls with their medicine, and had them sitting on the floor for the moment. Well, you were kind enough to introduce yourselves. Now we will do the same. My name is Issei Hyodo. Issei pointed to Indra. And this is Indra Kaneshiro, an old friend of mine. Why did you rescue us? Rainier asked. Issei raised an eyebrow. Why not? You had nothing to do with what happened in the church. You were innocent, and we won't stand by while innocent people are in danger. Indra nodded in agreement. But, shish. Issei put a finger to his mouth, and Rainier stopped talking. You were innocent. No arguing, understand? He asked with a soft tone. Rainier sighed, but then looked back up at the two with a smile. You two are something else, she giggled. One of a kind for sure. Issei replied with smirk. He then saw Asia dressed in the clothes he left her. She now wore a dark green yukata with a cream-colored obi tied around it, and a gray hakama skirt. It's nice of you to join us, Issei commented, liking how she looked in the garments. Asia blushed, noticing how Issei was looking at her. She saw Rainier sitting on the floor and went over to give her a hug. While the two embraced, Indra brought out a tray with cups of tea from the small kitchen area they had in the spare room. Thank you, Indra. Issei took a sip of tea before placing the cup on the table, and faced the girls. Now, to why we brought you here, it should be quite easy to know. But that isn't the topic we wish to discuss with you, he said, getting curious looks. Issei got himself comfortable since the girls were going to be permanent residents here anyway. It all started when… Done. I hope this one was satisfactory. Please review. A little late I suppose, but that's life for ya. Anywho, I don't plan to expose our assassins until at least 1 or 2 more chapters pass. Speaking of chapters, a new assassin is going to appear in the next one, so be ready for that. Now I'm done with news and announcements, I'll see you next chapter. First, previous ch3 of 12 next, chapter 4. Here we are, chapter 4. The pairs will be updated after the chapter is over. Enjoy. Issei has explained the long story about the conflict between the assassins and the Templars. The girls were all shocked that such a conflict was kept hidden for so long, even to this day. They were speechless as Issei sat on the floor in front of them. Issei had already expected their reactions, and smiled cheekily as he ate a piece of cake. Levi had been kind enough to give the boys some dessert before they left. I don't know what to say. Rainier finally broke the silence. Yeah. Knowing a war has going on even before the factions even began to conflict with each other is very shocking. Calawarner added. Issei swallowed before tracing the navy blue-haired women with a reply. I know, but believe me. Despite the violence, I actually enjoy this life, he said. You enjoy killing? Middle asked, making Issei frown. He turned to her before replying to her inquiry. No, while I am skilled in the art of killing, it doesn't mean I enjoy it. There are morals. If one was to enjoy taking life away, then they wouldn't be considered human anymore. We are not mindless murderers. The girls were all quiet. Well, I don't care. Issei was surprised to hear that from Asia, of all people. It doesn't matter how many people you've killed. I know you're a good person, Issei, she said with smile, hoping to lighten up the mood. It worked, since Issei smiled and brought her in for a hug, effectively turning the former nun into a blushing mess. That's why I can always feel happy with you, Asia, he said. Now steam started bursting out from the poor blonde's ears. Rainier and Calawarner immediately knew that the small girl had an attraction to the brunette assassin. Well, what will you do now? Issei asked out of the blue. What? Rainier asked. Your situation in the church did not go unnoticed. If you report back to the Grigori, I know for a fact you will be punished severely. You can't just go out in the open either, since the devils will pursue you and likely exterminate you on sight, Issei said, making the fallen angels pale. What were they going to do? They had nowhere to wait. Can we stay here, please? Rainier practically begged, with Calawarner and Middle following her. Issei chuckled. I never said you weren't allowed to. I just wanted to know what you would do, he said, making them pout at him. That was just mean, making them believe he would cast them out. Okay, I've had my fun. Feel free to take a look around. I'm going out for a while. Issei made sure to put his vambraces on before he left, and bid the girls farewell for now. Issei hummed lightly to himself as he passed through the streets. What a wonderful day, he said softly. He looked around, seeing a few vendors out. He was in the main marketing district. Maybe I should make sushi for dinner tonight, he mused. No sooner when he thought that, he just happened to see a sushi stand. Well, it looked like one anyway, so decided to go for it. He went up to the vendor and waited. Oh, hello. How are you? It was girl running the stand. She was a brunette much like himself, with long hair reaching just past her shoulders, and golden brown colored eyes. I'm quite all right. What is this exactly that you're serving? He asked. The girl smiled a bit proudly. They are a creation of my own. They're barbecue bacon wrapped jalapenos. A little recipe I made after me and my mom visited America one time. Issei's mouth watered a little. It sounded very good. They sound good. How much for a few? He asked, getting his wallet out. The girl smiled. That'll be 30 yen. Issei handed her the money and waited while she prepared the food. Issei didn't even have to sniff for the aroma. It was already sending his sense of smell wild. After a few minutes, the girl put a plate down in front of him with, he counted, 6 jalapenos. Thank you, he said before bringing one up to his mouth. The moment he bit down, the flavor of the bacon with the barbecue-soaked jalapeno sent his taste buds into a flurry of excitement. It was settled that the brunette would now crave this tantalizing dish for a long time to come. As Issei enjoyed his meal, his eyes wandered about the environment, taking in the joy-filled people. The citizens were so full of energy today. It wasn't until something caught his eye, actually someone. It was a man wearing a coat, knee-length and colored black. Issei narrowed his eyes when he saw the very familiar cross in the form of a button on his chest. Activating eagle vision, Issei was able to identify that the man was definitely a threat. But luckily the man was not aware of who or what Issei was, since he seemed to be quite carefree. What are you up to? Issei got up from his seat and moved through the crowd, intent on keeping an eye on the suspicious man. Issei followed the man like a shadow, nearly invisible. The tailing had been a short 10 minutes, with the assassin following his target to a strip club. In fact, if he recalled, it was the very same one Indra had gone to kill the slaver trading off girls. What now? Issei watched the man walk up to one of the girls. Just now leaving from her shift, he guessed. The man grabbed the girl and dragged her into an alley, covering her mouth to prevent her from screaming out. Issei ran to the entryway of the secluded alley and peeked around the corner. There, he could see the man forcefully disrobing the young maiden, her clothes ripping and tearing, and being discarded onto the filthy ground. The assassin checked his blades and looked back up at the scene before him. He needed to act quick. The mysterious figure on the roof tailed his target through the streets, completely hidden in his blind spots. As he followed the man, he noticed a very familiar face slipping through the crowd, like water in the cracks of a stone wall. Well, I'll be. I didn't think Issei was this busy already. The figure mused to himself. Deciding to wait for a bit, he watched the brunette hunt the target. The figure frowned, seeing the scene playing out. That poor girl, he thought. Not wanting to waste time anymore, he let his arm rest at his side, catching 3 curved shuriken between his fingers. He raised his hand and gave the man a hard stare, despite him not being aware of his presence. He brought his arm back before slinging it forward and releasing the deadly projectiles from his hand. Down below, Issei had his blades ready, but the sound of something piercing the air caught his well-tuned hearing. He stopped to watch the man suddenly drop to the floor, releasing the girl from his hold. Issei walked up to the man, seeing a couple of shuriken embedded in his back, right where the heart would be. Issei ignored the corpse for now, and approached the girl. "Who are you?" she asked. Issei took in the girl's features. She looked quite average. But nonetheless, she was innocent, average or not. He took off his shirt, showing he was wearing another one underneath. He gave the shirt to her and stood back up to look around. As Issei investigated his surroundings, he missed the figure standing on the fire escape above him. "Just walk right past me." Issei's head whipped up to see a figure wearing a dark gray kimono with black hakama pants. On his forearms were leather vambraces, and he had a naginata sitting on his back. Issei's eyes widened when the figure lowered his hood, revealing black hair and dark brown eyes. He smiled as the figure jumped down from his perch to greet him. "Ichika Orimura." Issei gave his friend a bro hug with the raven-haired boy returning it. "I'm finally back," Ichika said, looking behind him. "Where's Indra, how's he?" Issei chuckled, with Ichika following him out of the alley. "You've missed a few things, man." Ichika raised an eyebrow. "Anything interesting?" Ichika asked. Issei gave him a grin. "How about learning that this whole area is devil territory?" That made Ichika give Issei a perplexed look. "There are devils here? That can't be a coincidence," he replied, with Issei nodding. "It's under the watch of Rias Gremory," he said, with Ichika now understanding. "I see." The two became silent for a moment before Issei broke it. "So how are Madoka and Chifuyu?" the brunette asked. Ichika chuckled, giving Issei a knowing look. "They still haven't forgotten about Indra, I'm sure you can figure out the rest," he said with a small grin. "Speaking of him, just wait till he sees you. He still hasn't forgiven you for that time you blew up his sweet stash," Issei said, making the black-haired boy sweat drop. "It wasn't even that much of a stash at the time. It was only 3 boxes of nothing but snowballs," Ichika replied, but Issei chuckled at his expense. Almost forgetting, he went back to the corpse and searched it. He found a letter on him. Ichika watched Issei before the brunette tossed the letter aside and walked beside him. "Find anything?" the raven-haired boy asked. Issei shook his head negatively. "Nothing useful." Rainier giggled as she looked at the drawing of her. Indra had been doing sketches to pass the time, and seeing his creativity, requested a drawing of herself. The piece of artwork itself was very detailed, almost worth a place in a museum if she said so herself. "This is amazing. Have you ever thought about doing a commission?" she asked. Indra adopted a questioning look. Not once had he ever thought of selling his art. He shook his head to answer her question, making her give him a grin. "You need a job, right? From what I remember you work for free, but you'll need some money in case of emergencies," she reasoned. Indra nodded, seeing where she was going with her idea. How come he never thought of that? "I guess I can try," he said, making Rainier smile. "That's the spirit." Just as she said that, the door to the hideout opened, showing Issei along with another boy she didn't recognize. "Hey Indra, you'll never guess who I found," Issei said, making the white-haired boy get up and go see what he was talking about. There in the main room, Indra saw Ichika. "Ichika. Good to see you again," he said. Ichika and Indra both hugged before Ichika turned his attention to Rainier. "Fallen angels too, huh?" he asked rhetorically. Rainier looked to Issei, who gave her a reassuring nod. "My name is Rainier. It's nice to meet you." Ichika took her hand in his and kissed it, making her giggle before his own hand was slapped away by Indra. Issei and Ichika shared a knowing look. Rainier saw the look and blushed, already knowing what the two were thinking. So, apart from our guests, we've been offering our service to citizens who need help. As of lately, we don't receive too many requests, Issei said, making Ichika nod. Nice hideout. Hanzo really went all out on it, he said while his eyes scanned the decor running along the walls. That's what I said. Issei chuckled. Ichika smiled before turning and heading back up to the door. Well, I need to go and get my sisters settled in. The three of us are starting at the academy tomorrow, and I still need to find a blacksmith to make some more shuriken for me. I'll see you tomorrow then. Issei called out to him, with Ichika holding a thumbs up as he left. Issei then turned to Asia as she came from her room. Asia, I want you to come with me to school tomorrow. I've prepared some papers to get you enrolled, he said, holding the necessary documents before storing them away for later. Oh, that sounds like fun. The former nun exclaimed with a smile. Issei returned it. I'm glad to hear that. Issei went into his own room to change into his night clothes. Now, we have busy day tomorrow, so I'd the rest now before you end up sleeping through your first day. The girls along with Indra went their separate ways to get ready for the next day. Morning came like it usually did, bright and rather quiet. Issei and Indra were already dressed in their uniforms, waiting for Asia to finish changing. When she came out of her room garbed in the correct attire, they walked to school with Rainier bidding them a good day. They entered through the gates as usual, heading straight for the student council president's office. Issei knocked, getting a "come in" in response and opened the door to show Sona working on a large stack of paperwork. Her gaze moved up from the paper and onto the ones who had been occupying her mind for the last few days. Yes, what do you need? She asked. Issei handed her the documents. We need to get Asia here enrolled and started as soon we can, he supplied her answer. Sona nodded, checking over the information. She was satisfied and stamped the papers before giving her a schedule. This will have all of your classes, she said to the blonde. She turned her eyes to Issei. Would you mind escorting her to homeroom? Issei shook his head. She's a good friend of mine, she'd never burden me, he said, making the blonde blush. After leaving Sona's office, Issei showed her to homeroom. Luckily she had 4 of the same classes with him and Indra. Right as they were about to enter, Issei saw Ichika standing outside the door. Hey man, good morning. Issei greeted his old friend with a fist bump. Indra gave him a nod. Yeah, good morning. I'm waiting for Chifuyu and Madoka to finish their introduction. Then it's going to be me and Asia. That student council president sure works fast, Ichika said. Issei smirked. I can tell just by looking at her. She's the by-the-book type. Ichika had a smirk of his own on his face, shaking his head with amusement. You can come in now. They heard Ms. Kurosaki call from inside the classroom. Asia started to fidget nervously. Issei put a comforting hand on her shoulder. It's going to be all right. I'll be right behind you. Asia nodded and took a deep breath before exhaling and walking in with the 3 boys. Ichika and Asia boy stood at the front of the class while Issei and Indra took their seats. Issei mouthed, "Go on," to the blonde before she put on a smile, the best she could. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Kurosaki said. Hi, my name is Asia Argento. Please treat me well, she bowed. The boys in the room started going wild over her, before Ms. Kurosaki put them into silence. Please take the empty seat behind Issei, near the window, she said with a smile. Ichika introduced himself and took a seat right beside Kaneko. Now, please take out your journals and we'll continue with our notes from yesterday. Ms. Kurosaki was the best teacher in both Issei and Indra's opinions. She did her job well, despite being a rookie. As Issei took his notes, he did not have to look to feel eyes on him. He didn't know who it was, nor did he care. He knew that his watcher would reveal themselves soon enough. He sent a subtle sign to Indra to let him know what was going on. Issei, Asia, Ichika, and Indra all sat under a tree near the end of the track field. School had just finished for the day and they were just enjoying their time in the nice shade as the sun harshly glared down on the earth. Prince Charming, heading our way, Ichika commented, letting his hidden blades retract. He had been playing with them since he couldn't risk carrying his tanto out in the open, on school grounds no less. The familiar blonde pretty boy walked up to the group, a friendly expression dawning his face. Hello friends, I'm sure you remember me, Kiba Yuto. My club president has asked for you to pay her a visit, he said, hoping they would comply. Rias Gremory, right? The Occult Research Club president? Ichika asked, already knowing the answer. Kiba nodded affirmatively. Yes. She'd like to talk with you, if you have nothing else to do, that is, he said. Issei shared a look with his assassin brothers and smiled. Why not? How can I reject the request of a beautiful woman? He asked with a hint of snark in his voice. If Kiba detected the sarcasm, he didn't show that he did, nor did he comment on it. He simply motioned for the group to follow him. They were led to the old school building, where Rias held her club activities. They entered a room with a couch and Rias herself was sitting behind a desk, with an expectant look on her face. When she saw Issei, she smiled and put her hands under chin. Hello Issei Hyodo, I'm Rias Gremory. Nice to finally meet you, she greeted. Issei chuckled. No need to tell me your name again, Rias. After all, you and Akino are all the girls talk about around the school, he said, making the redhead blush with embarrassment. She shook it off as quickly as it had come and gave the brunette a smile. So Issei, I have a question for you, she said. Her tone was becoming suggestive, and Issei had a pretty good idea at what she was going to be getting at. I'm listening, he said, playing along. I'd like you to join the Occult Research Club, she said, puffing her chest out a little. Hit the nail right on the head, he thought. He saw Indra and Ichika with small smirks on their faces. Is there a catch? I'm letting you know now that there have been other clubs before, even off school campus, who have tried to recruit me. There's bound to be a price or something to join such a isolate club like yours, Issei replied. Rias was caught a bit off guard by his reply. She knew that it drew some attention, being that she never really allowed anyone to join her club, despite how polite they were. She was assuming Issei found it to be quite odd to suddenly show interest just like that to a random person. Boy, was she right. But it's not like that conclusion needed to be confirmed, not yet anyway. Ah, are these our juniors? They heard an alluring voice as the door opened. It was Akino who entered the room holding a tray with cups of tea on it. Yes. I'm sure you know them already, Rias replied, taking a cup for herself. Thank you, Akino, Issei said as the raven-haired beauty handed him his own tea. The girl's large breasts bounced as she put her hand to her cheek and smiled. It's my pleasure, she replied. Now, what do you say? Rias expected an answer. Looked at Indra and Ichika, the three seeming to have a mental conversation before a decision was made. What are we expected to do as club members? Issei asked. Rias smiled, seeing she was making progress. We investigate the supernatural, and we also do favora for other people. Contracts, you could say, she smiled. There, I'm done for now. Sorry if it's a bit late. I've been very focused on school lately, so my writing progress was slowed a bit. So, I've made an update for pairs, as I mentioned up at the top. You'll see that eventually, since I'm constantly making adjustments. Now, onto our newest assassin. Character bio name, Ichika Orimura. Age. 16 rank. Assassin 4th rank personality. While not born into the order, Ichika became an assassin by choice in order to provide for his sisters. Ichika shows calm and caring traits towards almost anyone, and can also be a bit playful and snarky from time to time. Weapons. Hidden blades. New-fashioned hidden blades made of stronger steel alloy. Left has been modified with a poison dart launcher. Naginata. A beautiful and deadly naginata, with perfect long reach and defensive capability. Tanto. A well-crafted tanto, used for quicker and closer ranged combat. Shuriken, max 20, standard throwing shuriken for silent long-range takedowns. Equipment. Assassin notebook. Used by Ichika to store away vital information and personal thoughts. Assassin robes. New set of traditional robes, consisting of a modified kimono and hakama pants. Well, I'm done now. Hope this was enjoyable, and I'll see you guys next chapter. First, previous ch4 of 12 next, the 5th installment of Restoration. Once more, I hope this will be enjoyable. You should know I don't own High School DxD or Assassin's Creed already. Let's continue. The three assassins waited out their options as the Gremory heiress waited quietly. The first, and most obvious choice was that if they did accept the offer, they would have the devils butting into their business. Second, if they didn't accept, it was chance that they would still get suspicious. Third, was to make a bargain, and hopefully give themselves some breathing room. I'll ask again. What are we expected to do here? Besides doing favors? Issei said. Rias smiled, seeing that he was considering. Well, sometimes we go on trips, plan events like the student council, and we sometimes investigate signs of paranormal activity, she said. That last one was both a little bit of a lie and truth. They investigated any hostile presences and stray devils, but to any outsiders, it was just another ghost hunt. I see. Issei looked to Ichika, who shrugged. We might need a little more time to consider. This is still a big decision to make, he said. Rias nodded in understanding, before bidding them farewell. For now anyway. The three left the room and Rias waited with the smile still plastered on her face. When she was certain the three were gone, she looked to Aquino and nodded. You know what to do, she said. Aquino smiled and left after making sure everyone had tea. Outside, Ichika leaned against the tree and smirked. You know they're bound to get curious, right? Issei gave him a cunning smile. Then let's put on a show. He waved his hand dramatically. We're tricking them. Indra stated more than he asked. Issei nodded and pat him on the head. That is correct, my friend. The three assassins took a nice scenic walk back to their hideout. Issei was the first to notice their follower, and he smiled. Let's go to that cliff we always played at, he said. Ichika got a smirk while raising an eyebrow. The one where we used to play treasure hunters? He asked. Issei nodded. That's the one. I have a surprise for our little audience, he replied. They followed his lead, walking calmly along the road as they started to come up on the beach. Issei took a deep breath and exhaled. This reminded him of when he was younger and they would walk along this very same beach in the morning. Those were such fond memories. They've stopped, Ichika said, but kept up his unaware facade. It was going just how they needed it to be. There's our spot, Issei said as the three walked. You ready to go down memory lane? He asked. The others didn't need to say anything to give a good answer. Aquino sighed as she put her hand up to her cheek. She had waited until the boys were out of sight before continuing her pursuit. But then the strangest thing happened. When she followed them into the cave, she was expecting them to be there. She remembered hearing one of them say, treasure hunters. Maybe it was an old they had come up with. But now, as Sona had said before, they simply disappeared. A smirk started to pull at her lips. If that was how it was going to be, then all right. She would play this little game of cat and mouse. Oofufufufu. I think this just might be a challenge. She giggled before leaving. Had she stayed for just a few seconds she would have heard the sound of stone grinding on stone. Your plan worked, Issei. But they're onto us now. The devils are going to be much more persistent, Ichika said, brushing some dust from his uniform. I know. It's inevitable now, but we just need to delay as long as we can, the brunette replied. It was fact. Once you got involved in the world of the supernatural, it was nearly impossible to get back out. For one reason or another, someone was going to pursue you. Guess that was life's way of irony. The assassins hunt the Templars, now the assassins are being chased by devils. Let's head back. There might be some work for us to do, and I don't trust leaving the girls on their own for too long. Issei led his brothers out of their old hangout spot and headed back without drawing any more attention. What are you doing? They heard Rainier shout as they entered. Indra sighed, knowing full well what was happening. Something we should be aware of? Issei asked teasingly. Indra rolled his eyes. The white-haired assassin went into the library and diffused whatever situation was going on. Ichika went over to the desk, and found there were indeed some contracts available. What are we working with? Issei asked as he came over. There's a rogue priest named Shaden Weller. A corrupt official trying to call mortgage in the residential district. And we have a. Ichika stopped at the last one. What is it? Issei took the last contract and read it over. He saw why his raven-haired friend paused. This is right. Issei narrowed his eyes on the label. There was no name for the target. But, it seemed to be a serious problem if the description wasn't saying it. There was a person going around murdering women in the western side of the city. Issei set the note down and rubbed his temples. What is it with people today and their problems with women? He asked rhetorically. What about women? Issei turned around to see the girls were all now gathered in the central room, and had heard what he said. Someone who obviously doesn't seem to like girls is going around and killing them, he said. The girls looked disgusted while Asia looked fearful. Are you going after them? She asked, but she was already guessing the answer. Issei nodded. I am. He looked at Indra and Ichika. Ichika, you will be dealing with the corrupt official. Indra, you're taking the rogue priest. The three all nodded and gathered their equipment before setting out to do their work. Be safe. They heard the collective call of the girls. I swear, it's always something with women. Issei muttered as he leapt across the roofs without so much as a sound. The note had said the target would be around in this district, but there was no specific way to identify him. This meant Issei would have to dig in and really do some work. First things first, I need a clue. Issei found a good spot to descend from his height and down onto the ground without drawing suspicion. He then set out and kept his eyes open for anything. Wandering for what seemed like hours, Issei decided to see if the locals knew anything. He walked towards a brown-haired man who was having a smoke, leaning against the wall of a building. A cliché sight he had seen in movies plenty of times. Sir, do you know anything about the murders that have been happening here recently? The man raised an eyebrow as he looked at the young man in front of him. He looked like some sort of priest or a scholar. What's it to you? You trying to come bless us with your Holy Spirit stuff? He asked, his voice was rather gruff. Issei rolled his eyes under his hood. No, but if you could tell me something that would help out, that would be appreciated. He replied. The man sighed, blowing out a column of smoke as he did so. Well, after examining most of the victims, I noticed they were all workers at the red dress. Maybe whoever's doing it has something against them, not sure why they would though, he said, blowing out another column of smoke. Issei took that piece of information in mind. He took a closer examination of the man before him, now noticing his lab coat and the stethoscope hanging around his neck. He was a doctor. What's your name, sir? He asked, taking his fellow brunette by surprise. The doctor dropped what was left of his cigarette, and then shook Issei's hand. My name is Toshio Ozaki. I work at a local clinic here in this district, he said. Perfect. If I come across anyone, I'll know who to look for. Ozaki chuckled at Issei's remark. Sure, if you can, bring them by so I can treat them. Issei nodded and set off towards the red dress for more information. As he did, Issei got the familiar feeling of being watched. Not now, damn it, he thought as he walked up to the strip club. He entered through the front door and the inside was glowing with neon lights everywhere. Now, he needed to find the one in charge. If the girls working here were being killed, then the manager would know. He activated Eagle Vision and looked around, though he was having to glide through the crowd to see where he was going. His eyes landed on a woman highlighted with gold. She was working in the bar section of the club. He made his way over and took a seat by her before Eagle Vision went away. He was now looking at a woman with shoulder-length brown hair and amethyst-colored eyes. Her cream skin glowed and reflected with colors in the neon lights. How can I help you, sweetie? Her voice was mature and sultry. Issei wanted to smile, but he needed to know how he could get his target. Would you happen to know anything about some dead girls? He asked, low enough so only she could hear. He saw her expression change to one of grim, and knew he had found a source of information. Come to the back with me, she said, giving her workers a stern look that said to not disturb them. Issei was led to a back office where the manager sat down in a chair across from him and sighed, rubbing her temples. So you want to know about my girls, huh? Why? She asked, bringing a bottle of wine out from a drawer she was sitting close to. Because I'm here to put a stop to these killings. It's drawn my attention, and I'm already picking up a trail, he said, making it clear he wasn't going to give up on his objective anytime soon. The manager sighed before taking a sip of wine to straighten out her nerves. Well, where do I begin? She muttered. The killing started about a week or two ago, I believe, she said. Issei raised an eyebrow. On my way here, I met a doctor. He thought that somebody had some kind of grudge or something against you. Could that be it? He asked. The manager shook her head, unsure of the hypothesis herself. I don't really know, was her reply. Have you had any clients here who may have looked or behaved strangely? Anything at all that could aid in my search? The brunette assassin asked. The young woman put her hand under her chin and thought for a moment. Well, I remember there was this one guy. He was a bit too touchy-feely, and the girls often complained about him. Issei started to mentally file that away. Anything else? Issei saw the woman's expression become more grim. Actually, now that I'm starting to recall, he was a bit of a troublemaker. He left here pissed off because one of the girls slapped him or something, she said. Issei smirked. Do you remember the girl who he was harassing? I might get some more information from her, he suggested. Yeah, he was messing with Hinata. I can get her really quick for you," she said, getting up. "Thank you," Issei called out as she left. After waiting for approximately 6 or 7 minutes, the manager came back with another girl. Her hair was pure chocolate brown, dropping down to her hips, and her eyes were blue like diamonds. She wore a skimpy outfit consisting of a violet-colored corset and panties and stocking to match. He was in a strip club, so her attire wasn't surprising. "Hinata, I presume?" he asked. She nodded. "I understand you were harassed a short while ago. Could you tell me anything about that client in particular?" Hinata proceeded to tell him about what happened and what she learned of the man who tried to touch her. "He was about maybe of average looks and build. I remember that he looked a bit I wouldn't use the word shy, but he was kind of like that. Then one day he came back and he just started trying to touch me. I slapped him and told the boss. He left angry, and that's it," she confessed. "I see. If he's reclusive, he might be a bit difficult to find," he thought. He turned his gaze back at the young dancer and thanked her and the manager for their time. "Please come back if you find out anything," he heard the manager call to him as he left. Issei walked quietly, going over the information in his head. So the man obviously did not seem happy with the strip club, since he did not get his way, and he started to killing the girls to satisfy his anger. Simply put. Issei activates eagle vision and looked around the street. He only saw the blank figures of the citizens and a few blue highlighted figures here and there. He was about to stop when he saw a white glow, a very small trace of one. Issei moved close to it and inspected the area around. He saw more glimmering white, but it was in a messy trail. Issei deactivates eagle vision when he realized what he was looking at. It was a trail of blood, leading into an alley. Narrowing his eyes, and putting himself on guard, the brunette assassin treaded into the wolf's den. He came across a body of a girl. Her expression was one of terror, showing just how frightened she was in her last moments. Issei closed her eyes and put her hands over her chest. "Rest peacefully. I'll take it from here," he said. Issei caught a rather peculiar smell as he examined the girl's body. Poison, Tivian stuff. Amateur work, and a few small cuts to add on. He could trace the scent of it, it was still lingering. Issei activated eagle vision once more and looked for anything that would give him more to work with. There it is. He was able to see it just barely. It was a near dissipated trail of red, indicating the poison had left a trail behind for him to follow. He was now much closer to stopping this killer. Issei hit a slow jogging pace. The trail, while still visible, was losing its scent. That means the killer was close by, or he may have disposed of poison. No, because poison has a strong scent on the person even if they dispose of it. So that means he has to be close. Issei stopped when the scent was now barely traceable. He took in his surroundings, eyes scanning around for anything. Observing the citizens around, he could make out a few possible suspects. Specifically, one man in particular. Issei had entered the more lower-class area, like a ghetto, during his trail chasing. Issei calmly approached the man, who was sitting on a stained mattress, and attempting to warm himself by a fire. "Sir, may I take a moment of your time?" he asked. The man gave him a side glance, before responding. "Sure," he said, his voice croaked slightly. Issei smiled. "Would you happen to know about the red dress?" The young man rolled his eyes. "Yeah, what about it?" he replied. Normal people wouldn't notice it, but Issei did. The man twitched slightly. "I'm investigating the recent killings that have been happening." Issei could see the man was starting to seem uncomfortable with this topic. Under his hood, sharp eyes bored into the man. I see." The slow reply didn't do him any good, it just made the assassin question him more. "Sir, if you know something, anything at all, I'd appreciate it if you tell me. I need to see what I can do to stop this," Issei pressed. The man gulped. Issei caught him. "Does the name Hinata ring any bells?" Issei asked. The man froze, his eyes met Issei's, or at least tried to. They both stared at each other for what seemed like a long eternity. "No." The man brushed past him and ran. Issei was hot on his tail. "Are you sure? If you don't know, then why are you running?" Issei called out to his target. "I didn't do anything," the man shouted over his shoulder. "Only a guilty man runs with speed like that," Issei replied. Issei took his crossbow off his back and aimed for the man's leg. The bolt was launched and flew through the air, and impacted the calf. The man held his leg in agony, and tried to pull the bolt out of his leg. He noticed Issei coming, and heard the familiar sound of a blade being taken out. He would have said something else, before Issei thrusted his palm into his chest, and felt a blade pierce his heart. He was dead in only a few seconds. Find peace in the afterlife. Issei closed his eyes and left the body. The killer is no more, Issei said as he sat at the bar with the manager. She gave him a beautiful smile, filled with relief. Thank you so much, sir, she said. Issei smiled back. I was only doing my job, was his response. The manager raised a delicate eyebrow and gave him a playful smile. And what is your job? Her eyes were filled with genuine curiosity, and a hint of mischief. Issei returned the look. Keeping the world at ease, he said. The manager gave him a soft look. Sounds just like a dream job. To keep the world at peace, she said fondly. The two sat in comfortable silence as the two brunettes listened to the soft music playing. Say, what's your name? Mine is Venelana. She broke the silence after a minute. My name is Issei, Issei Hyodo. Venelana looked the robed boy up and down, before a satisfied smile crawled across her face. Issei Hyodo, huh? Issei got up and was about to leave before he felt a small hand on his shoulder. Here, take this, he heard Venelana say, before he felt her place a small slip of paper into his hand. Issei gave her a nod and left. As he did, Issei looked at the slip in his hand. Call me, it had Venelana's signature along with her number. Issei smiled before placing the note in his pocket. Well, how was that? Good? Bad? Right, so here is a little bit of what I have to say at the moment. I haven't revealed all of what remains of the Brotherhood yet. So far, you only know Issei, Indra, and Ichika. I have at most 2 to 3 other characters in store, but I will reveal them when I feel that the time is appropriate. Yes, Issei and the guys will be found out eventually. I know some of you are wanting the assassins to get involved with Supernatural, but I want them to stay in the shadows for just a little bit longer. Now, with that having been said, please review, and enjoy the rest of your day. First, previous ch5 of 12 next, chapter 6. I'm back with update number 6. Sorry, if I kept you guys waiting too long, but with school almost over the teachers are really piling up all these finals on us. Anyway, let's push that aside for now and talk about the story for a second. I'm glad to know that there's still people waiting, and eager to read my story. It's heartwarming. Now, let's continue. Two assassins stood atop the statue of Christ the Redeemer, watching the waves crash against the sand, and the birds fly over their heads. One of them was looking through the scope of AL-118A1 sniper rifle, a gold eye blinking inside of it. I have the target in sight, he said in a low voice. His brother next to him nodded. Wait for the right moment. The wind is blowing harsh right now. You need to make this shot, he said, bringing a pair of binoculars to his hooded face. Hold on, there's a girl in the way, the one holding the rifle said. Easy Shiraku, just wait, the other assassin said. The two watched patiently, waiting for that one moment to strike. They felt the breeze cease, and no sooner when it did, the line of sight was clear. Take it. PWWWWW. Asterisk, he's down. The assassin tossed the binoculars to the side and smiled. Nice shot as always, Shiraku. The golden-eyed assassin smiled as he put his rifle on his back. That's our last target, Hayato, he said. That's right. It's time to go home, Hayato replied. They scaled their way down from the large statue and made their way through the streets of Rio de Janeiro. The people here were lively as they went about their daily business. The assassins were heading for the favela. It made hiding out much easier. As they climbed up the set of buildings, they came up with a small, but home-feeling hideaway. There was a pigeon coop with only a single pigeon in it. Hayato approached the birdcage and gently took the bird in his hand, taking the note from it. He unfolded the message and skimmed through its contents. His mouth set into a thin line. That's not good, he said, getting Shoriku's attention. What's wrong? He asked, coming over. Hayato handed him the message, and when he read it, he crumbled it in his hand. Yes, that's definitely not good. He discarded the crumpled paper and sat down in a thoughtful manner. Shiraku, if the supernatural gets involved, this war will only become more difficult. If the apple falls into their hands, it's bound to restart the Great War, Hayato said. Shiraku gazed at him from the corner of his eyes. You think I don't know that Hayato, Issei, Ichika, and Indra are the only ones in Japan right now? They may be masters, but the Templars will take any chance they can to crush us, Shiraku said. Our war may nearly be over, but if the supernatural gets in our business they'll hinder us from keeping the world safe. Hayato replied, with Shiraku nodding in agreement. We're in a tough spot. Shiraku sighed. What do we do? Shiraku remained silent before he opened his eyes and stood up abruptly. We leave for Japan, first plane out of here, he said. Hayato nodded and they both packed their things. Indra blinked as Asia healed the cut on his side. While out on his assignment, Indra had successfully taken out his target, but one of his lackeys, in a last ditch, got a lucky hit on the white-haired assassin before he broke his neck. There, all finished. Indra got up off the medical table and gave the former nun a thankful nod. That power of yours never ceases to amaze, Asia, Issei said, patting the blonde on her head, making her blush. Thank you, Issei. She peeped. The brunette smiled before turning to Indra. You good? Indra nodded. Do we have any reply from the others? He asked. That was the moment Ichika walked in the room. His hands were empty, but he had a calm smile on his face. I've sent messages via pigeon to Brazil, Spain, and Austria, he said. Issei gave him a grateful nod and sat down at the table. Thank goodness. I hope they're all right, he said. Ichika and Indra both smiled. If I know any better, Shiraku is way too stubborn to die, and Hayato is sharp as ever. Komiharu is obviously capable of warding off unwanted company, and Yorikaze knows how to keep out of the light. Issei nodded in agreement with his friend. He was right, the others would be fine, all he needed to do was be confident in their talents. So apart from contacting the others, what else have you been doing? Issei asked, starting to clean his hidden blades. Not much. We've gone through a lot of our contracts, and we've taken down 2 Templar leaders in those tasks, Ichika replied. What about, you know who? Issei asked, his eyes flicking up at him for a brief second. Ichika shook his head. Sorry Issei, but there hasn't been any sign of the Templar leader. Ichika told him. Issei sighed as he retracted his now clean blades back into place. That's all right, Ichika. Unless we wish to dwindle our numbers anymore, we'll just have to be patient until then, he said. I guess that's a wrap for the day then, Ichika replied. Well, let us get ready. School education is still important, despite our already busy lives, Issei said as he went to get ready for bed. I agree. I'll see you at school tomorrow, Ichika said as he left to go back to his home. As Issei relaxed on his pillows, he felt an extra weight take up his left arm. He opened his eyes to see Asia, looking away with a faint blush on her cheeks. He smiled. Yes, Asia? The nun looked back up at the assassin, and breathed out deeply. Can I sleep with you? She asked, her foot kicked slightly at the floor. Issei smiled and scooted over so there was some space on his pillows. Asia smiled happily and got down next to him. Issei put his arms around her protectively and settled. Good night, Asia. Asia was happily asleep already, and Issei followed shortly after. Morning came as it usually did, and the trio of young assassins were just walking past the school gates. As they did, the kendo club managed to stop them. Issei, can we talk to you for a moment? The club captain, Murayama, came up to the trio and bowed. Issei returned the gesture and gave Murayama a charming smile. What can I help you with, Murayama? He asked. The kendo captain was caught blushing, due to his smile, but she snapped out of her trance before she ended up staring. Right, well, the girls and I were wondering if you'd like to have a spar with us later. Would you like to? She asked, meeting his gaze. Issei looked at Ichika, then Indra. The both of them shrugged. They were all right with whatever choice he made. Do you mind if my friends here tag along? He asked. Murayama shook her head, smiling. Not at all. The more, the merrier, as the saying goes, she replied. Then we'd be happy to come by. When would you like to meet? He asked. After classes are over. Club activities will be from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Can you make it? Issei nodded. We sure can. Murayama smiled happily and headed to class. I'll see you later then, she said, running ahead of them. A nice girl, that one. Ichika commented. Nice, was Indra's input. She is, isn't she? Issei said as the three continued to class. Faye smiled as she watched the boys from her spot in the tree. It's only a matter of time, she mused to herself. Moving her eyes over the old school building, she caught sight of Rias Gremory. The said devil was leaning out from the window, looking down at the three assassins. Faye didn't like her, if that was not known well enough. Simply put, as a creature with animalistic instincts, it should be known that Faye likes to have her freedom. Throwing in with the devils would only take that away, and she didn't like that. Which is why she was questioning the presence of a Nekomata in her peerage. While Faye could not see it, she could tell her fellow cat could sense her presence. She smirked her famous Cheshire grin. Let the fun begin. Below, in the old school building, Kaneko was looking out of the window, right where she could sense the familiar presence. Why is another yokai here? She thought. The rook was thinking of alerting Rias, but if it was only one, there may not be much of a problem. The question in her mind was still pressing for an answer though. It would be best if she found one soon. Kaneko, is something wrong? She snapped out of her mental trance and looked up at Aquino, who came into the room. Nothing. Late? Aquino nodded in response. But there was no worry, Rias would take care of it. Indra shook his head, amused with Faye's antics. He saw Issei crack a smirk to his side as he finished the assignment. Up to her usual tricks? Issei asked rhetorically. Indra said nothing as he nodded, finishing his own work. Oh, are you done already, boys? They looked up and saw their English teacher smiling. Yes, Ms. Yuri. Issei replied. The teacher smiled as the two set their papers down on her desk and went back to their seats. Did I ever tell you that you're my favorite students? She asked, tilting her head smiling. She was about to say something else, until a large amount of blood spurted from her mouth, and she fell back onto the floor. Issei sighed, but smiled as Indra picked up the teacher. I guess I'll see you at lunch. Issei raised an eyebrow teasingly. Indra rolled his eyes, but smiled nonetheless as his teacher slept in his arms. A few girls blushed with jealousy, seeing the teacher getting such treatment from the seclusive boy. Meet me at our usual spot, Issei called out as Indra rounded the corner. Indra opened the door to the nurse's office and set down Yuri on one of the beds. Oh, hello again, Indra. Indra turned around, only to get a faceful of very large boobs. Aki Nijo, the school nurse, had a close familiarity with the white-haired teen. They met on the second day of school when Indra was skipping lunch. Aki was a young woman with long blue hair reaching the small of her back, and copper-brown eyes. Her skin was a pasty white and she had a body most girls would kill to have. She wore the traditional lab coat a doctor would wear. Underneath, she wore a purple, strapless top, which was laced down the middle, and that showed a lot of cleavage. With that, she wore a short black skirt. Indra took a step back so he could allow his respiratory system to function again, and greet the nurse properly. Good to see you again, Aki. The blue-net nurse saw Yuri on the bed and sighed, but quickly got to work. She vomited blood again. She stated, more than she asked. Indra nodded. All right, I'll get started with the blood transfusion. She will be fine tomorrow. That wasn't long. Issei commented as Indra took a seat beside him. They sat at their usual spot on the roof, enjoying the view of the city, and with the wind playing with their hair. Where's Ichika? Indra asked, taking a bite out of his sushi. He has a task to handle for a minute. Don't worry. Issei assured him, drinking from a water bottle. There was a long and comfortable silence before their trained hearing caught someone's footsteps. Now who could this be? Issei asked. Indra shrugged. Hello. It was a girl's voice, one that was unfamiliar. That's not Faye. Indra said. Turning their heads slightly over their shoulders, the assassins found a girl with white hair. Hee, it's like looking at a female Indra. Issei thought. Yes, is there something you need? Issei asked, having a pretty good idea on why this girl was here. My name is Momo Hanakai, I'm with the student council, she said. Well, it's nice to meet you, Momo. As I'm sure you know, I'm Issei Hyodo, and this is Indra Kaneshiro, he replied. The white-haired girl nodded. So, is there something you need from us? Issei asked. He looked at Indra from the corner of his eyes, with his friend receiving the signal with a nod. We noticed that you haven't joined a club yet. The president sent me to remind you that it's mandatory to participate in extracurricular activities. Momo said. Issei however picked up the message underneath. The devils were starting to get wary of them, and as such, they were now trying to keep a close eye on them. Well, rest assured we'll make a decision soon enough, Issei replied. Momo stared at them for a moment before nodding, and heading back down the stairs. "When do we move?" Indra asked, staring off into the distance. "Tonight," Issei said, cleaning up his leftovers. The two left the roof to find their third member and inform him of the situation. "How do we want to approach this?" Ichika asked as he looked down below. Issei looked down at the cluster of Yakuza mercenaries below, assessing the environment. After a careful once-over, the brunette had a plan. "Ichika, you sneak around on the side, and wait for my signal." He turned to Indra. "Indra, strike from above when I give you the go-ahead." "And what will you do, Issei? Or do I really have ask?" Ichika smirked, a smirk that Issei returned. "Once the silence is broken, leave no survivors." The three nodded and put the plan into action. "All right, men, we just got word of another sighting," the leader said over his large group of men. "Sighting?" Issei thought as he waited for more information. "Our employer says a rich girl is hiding at this school here." Issei felt his hands clench when he saw that it was a picture of Kuo Academy in his hands. "We take her, and the family will surely hand over their provinces," he said. "Provinces? What provinces did the devils claim? We will strike tomorrow. Be ready, we are one step closer to fortune. It's not looking good here. Who hired these men? Why are they after devil-claimed provinces?" Issei could tell nothing else was going to be said, and right then, the group of mercenaries dispersed and went about to prepare. It was now the appropriate time to leave before he was noticed. Issei descended from his perch on the rooftop and disappeared into the night. When Issei reached the hideout, he found Ichika and Indra already inside. "Looks like we have our work cut out for us," Ichika said, handing Issei a folded sheet of paper. "That's their plan for tomorrow," Ichika said as Issei looked over what was a map of the whole city of Kuo. "They're going to occupy the school until they find the rich girl," Issei commented, drawing nods from both. "Issei, you know what this means, right?" Ichika asked. Issei nodded. "It means we will have to expose ourselves and take action, or we let this play out. However, we can't guarantee that innocents won't be harmed in this act," the brunette replied. There was a grim silence. "What do we do?" Indra asked, breaking the silence. Issei sat down on a bench and sighed. "I don't know. One part of me wants to act, and protect the people, and another part of me wants me to keep the Brotherhood from being compromised," he said. There was another pause, until Ichika broke the deafening silence. "Issei, the choice is up to you. Whatever you choose to do, we'll follow you," he said, with Indra nodding in agreement. Ever since Hanzo died, Issei had taken charge, and he had yet to lead his friends astray, not that he was counting on that. Issei considering his choices very carefully after hearing their input. He thought hard before he opened his eyes and gazed down at one of the few fireplaces. With his eyes now filled with hard resolve, he had made his decision. "Rest. It will be a long day tomorrow," he said. School was already in session, with the students going on with their schedule normally. There was however, one thing missing. Well, three actually. Ichika Orimura, Indra Kaneshiro, and Issei Hyodo. Sona narrowed her eyes, suspicion clearly portrayed in them. When the attendance was taken, and she noticed all three were absent, it was her belief they were up to no good. "I warned Rias, and now I have to fix her mistake," she muttered, tossing the paper to the side of the desk. She stood up and looked out of the window, her eyes scanning the courtyard, as if it knew the answer for her problem. She noticed a few black vans pull up at the front, just outside of the gate. Groups of men with face masks, swords, and guns broke through the gate and breached into the main lobby. Sona's eyes widened and she rushed down to see what was going on. The men had the students held up in the lobby. "Listen up, people, because I'm only going to say this once. We heard of some wealthy folks coming here, and we thought we would give them a proper welcome," the leader of the group said, holding a tanto to a girl's neck. She shivered in fear as the blade was just mere centimeters from piercing her skin. Rias and the others wanted to do something, but they knew that if they tried to move on the men, innocent students would die. Rias herself felt bad, knowing she wouldn't be able to save the people under her watch without exposing herself. Not only that, but there were too many students to save. Rias couldn't just revive everyone she wanted. She wouldn't need to do that. Fate had other plans. One of the Yakuza went into the nurse's office and yanked Aki and Yuri out, and shoved them onto the floor. Right as he was about to walk away, he felt someone grab him, before he felt a blade sink into his heart from behind. The rest of the mercenaries were searching through the crowd of students. They didn't notice that some of their men were missing. "Hey!" One of the girls shot up and ran, and the Yakuza guarding her sprinted after her. The mercenary tracked her to the kendo club. The girl was a second year with raven black hair and black eyes. She shivered as the man drew closer to her. He was about to just dispose of her, when a sound caught his ears. It was the sharp and elegant call of an eagle. Looking up, the Yakuza mercenary caught sight of the bird he identified, and it started to fly away. He followed the bird with his eyes, before they widened upon catching a look of a white figure. The man blinked, and the figure was gone. He shook his head, muttering that he shouldn't have drank so much before the operation. The second he turned around to finish the girl, he was face to face with the same white figure. The Yakuza leader was beginning to grow impatient. No one was saying anything, and his men were doing nothing about it. He shook his head. "Want something done, you do it yourself," he said, reaching out, and grabbing a pink-haired girl. "Katase. All right. If no speaks up in next 10 seconds, this girl is dead. You got that?" he said, looking around seeing the conflicted faces of the teens. "Sir." The leader rolled his eyes, still holding his tanto to Katase's neck, and addressed his subordinate. "What?" he asked. The subordinate looked a slight bit nervous when he replied. Sir. Naki is missing." "Well then that's his fault. He won't be getting a cut." The leader searched the crowd with his eyes, until he caught sight of Rias finally. I think she'll do," he thought. But suddenly, the sound of something hitting the ground caught his attention. He looked down at the floor and saw a ball-shaped orb, a bomb. He panicked and threw Katase down. A black plume of smoke began to shroud the students and Yakuza. They kept their guard up as the smoke crept around them, as if taunting them. Pew! 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 The sound of bodies hitting the floor caught the leader's ears and he was now looking around at rapid pace. What was happening? This was supposed to be an easy job. Luckily, a gust of wind, gentle as it was, blew the cloud away and revealed that the men around had been killed. There was no one else here but the students, and it didn't seem like any of them had moved. Suddenly, he felt a sense of dread. Looking around, he tried to find the source of his uneasy feeling, until he saw a feather slowly drift in front of his face without a care in the world. It was brown. He looked up, expecting to see a bird, but instead, he saw 3 white figures looking down at him. What? How the hell? When did they get there? Where? His rapid fire of questions was brought to an end when a loud sood rang out through the campus. Pow! The Yakuza leader felt a slight sting in his chest, and looked down. He saw a trail of red liquid going down his chest. Blood. His blood. He collapsed to the ground dead. Rias and Sona managed to catch a good look at the robed figures on the roof before they turned their backs to them, and disappeared. With swiftness, Rias and Sona quickly erased everyone's memory so they would not remember, and pursued the unknown figures. However hard they tried, ended in disappointment and frustration. The figures were gone, as if they were just an illusion since the moment they had appeared. Done. Sorry again for the wait. Work occupies most of my daytime, and another majority is spent planning out and thinking about how to progress my stories. Don't worry though, I'm not overworking myself. But, something like writing takes time, and I prefer to come up with thought-out, solid ideas while sticking with just a bit of the original plot. So, after this chapter, the assassins will be found by the supernatural. They've made a big risk exposing themselves, but it was either remaining in secret and keep their edge, or they follow their duty to safeguard innocence. I hope this was satisfactory, and I'll be sure to get to work on the next chapter ASAP. First, previous ch6 of 12 next.